Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan. We're continuing on our series, Parenting with Purpose. I hope you're enjoying it. This is the next to last session in this series, and we're going to be talking about screen media again today in a little different way, and then we're going to put a closure on it next time. There's so much to talk about in this subject, and because there's so much, you never feel like you can get everything out that needs to come out, and we're still learning. Every day there's new things occurring. So keep up with all this. Don't just listen to me or listen to another person, but read, study, keep trying to make adjustments at home with your kids, because this is all new. It's a new age. And we want to make it right for our kids and their grandkids and our grandkids for the future. To do that, we need to realize this is a new adventure for all of us. And in any new adventure, there's pitfalls and there's successes. We want to have as few pitfalls as possible. It's like looking at the old days and the Westerns on the movies and all that, and you can see, oh yeah, they could have done it this way, or they should have done this, or they should have done that. Well, we don't want to look back on all this and think, oh boy, I wish I'd have done this, or I wish I'd have done that. Let's try to make the adjustments as quickly as we can to this new adventure of the digital age. Well, plugging the book once again, Unmasking Addiction. It's a community and a connection. And I wrote the book in such a way that it can relate to as many people as possible in regards to substance abuse, alcohol abuse, behavioral abuses, gambling, pornography, or anything else, buying, you name it. We cover the bases all the way through with the current research in the book. A lot of the books out there have the old research, and this has the current research in it. It addresses the role of community and spiritual fellowship in recovery, highlighting the importance of connection and support for sustained recovery. There's just too much of this short-term recovery going on, and we need to sustain those recoveries. Let them be permanent as quickly as we can. Instead of typical relapses are about 7 to 9 relapses before a sustained recovery occurs. Is that necessary? Let's cut it back. Why not just 1 relapse before a sustained recovery, or 2 or 3 is better than 7 or 9. But to do that, you got to study, you got to read, you got to learn more about it, participate. You have to have support systems and all that. And the family is the support system. So keep all that in mind, which is why you need to keep learning and reading, especially if you have someone in your family that has difficulties with addictions, any kind of addictions. Well, screen media today in part 7, industry versus inferiority is Erickson's developmental stage that we'll be talking about a little bit today. But the teacher said to Johnny in school, she said, Johnny, this science project's amazing. You might be a future engineer. And Johnny, his smart aleck self, says, thanks. That's why I use 37 paper clips, a shoelace, and 2 rubber bands. My sister used glitter. I'm definitely more industrial, he said. Well, yeah, he's more industrial apparently there. And that's how Johnny conquered Erickson's developmental stage with glue, unshakable confidence, and no digital media. That's the key there to that stage. We'll be talking about a little bit today. What's happening to our engineers out there? Are they learning these things? Are the future engineers learning what they need to learn in gaining industry? Because it's a stage we all go through. Or is there going to be inferiority? Let's think about that a little bit today. Foundational reforms for adolescent well-being is our subject. We've talked all about digital media, not all about it, but much about it. And we need to kind of pull it together here and recognizing that we need to group together as a community, as a family, as parents, and whoever else, politicians especially. We need to group together and say, well, what adjustments do we need to make regarding this? And there's a few suggestions. We've spoken of them all along, but we're going to bring them together in a summary today on those suggestions. And there's a whole lot more in detail on that subject. And so you need to talk to your congressmen, your senators, your politicians, your people in leadership, your school board, and teachers even, whoever has any influence whatsoever. We need to pull together and talking about what adjustments need to be made now for the future regarding digital media. A generation is at risk if we don't start now, and we're not doing very much about it, unfortunately. Raising children in a digital age is new to me because I wasn't raised in a digital age. For my boys who are adults, well, they were just getting into it. And so they were learning things, and now they're raising their children in this digital age. Where's the boundaries? Where's the guidance coming from the researchers, the people who in the know, the people who make laws and who educate and so on? We're not seeing much there, are we? We are seeing the research now. Now the research is pooling. It's starting to be enough research to tell us, oops, we've made some mistakes. We need to make adjustments. And some of those adjustments we'll talk about, but there's a lot more. We're just hitting the surface of it. Love is essential, but vision is vital. And we need to have vision about this for the future, for our children and our grandchildren and all the rest of them in the future. Screens shape attention. Screens shape identity. And they shape the behavior as well. And if you have children and they're on screens, you already know what I'm saying is true. It's shaping them. We want to shape them in a healthy way. We want it to be balanced. And if it's balanced, then they're going to thrive, and they're going to be in complete growth in their way of thinking and behaving. They'll have all the aspects in there because they will have had balance. Unfortunately, the balance isn't there. It's too much on the screen media now, not enough on everything else that needs to be there. And as we said last time, that part's going to get depleted. That means they're going to have trouble in adult life and all these other parts. They might be great in screen media, but everything else is going to be lacking, and there's going to be difficulties. And I don't know about you, but when I get teenagers for counseling, or even when you're talking to them on, my grandkids have friends, and or you talk to other parents and their kids are around, and you're talking to the kids. Are they looking at you in the eyes? Are they focused on you? If you'll notice, if you pay attention to that, a lot of them aren't doing that anymore. A lot of them they're looking away as they're talking, as they're listening to you. And why is that? It's because they're so focused on the screen media. They're so focused on looking at the screen instead of looking at mom and dad talking to them, or brother or sister talking to them, or friend, or whoever else. They're on the phone. They're, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, okay, somebody's talking on the side. It's even kind of a problem when you go to a fast food place and you place an order. Are they looking at you? Yeah, of course, they got to push the buttons, but are they really looking at you? If you pay attention, you'll start to notice that, oh no, they're not. There's fewer and fewer young people looking at you when you're talking to them or when they're talking to you. That's why we're talking about this. We need to address these things as soon as we can in making these adjustments for the future. Eye contact has been replaced by scrolling. The Bible tells us the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. I don't want to keep going and pay a penalty. I want to be prudent and making adjustments where I need to adjust, be flexible when I need to be flexible, be firm when I need to be firm, set boundaries when boundaries need to be set. If I do those things, then the future is going to work out pretty well. If I don't do those things, then I'm going to pay a penalty. There's going to be a consequence for it all. Do you want your kids to pay that consequence if you're not setting the boundaries now? If your teachers aren't setting the boundaries now? If the politicians, the leaders aren't setting the boundaries now? Purpose of parenting is transformation. We're transforming our kids into adults and into whatever else. Transformation is a growing process of change, not about convenience. It's not about being a parent out of convenience. What's convenient for me as a dad or a grandpa. No, if you're going to be a parent, convenience kind of goes out the window. Don't be a parent if you're not a parent already. If convenience is so important to you, then don't be a parent, because you're not going to be a good one if that's so important for you. That's why narcissists have such terrible parenting histories, because it's what's convenient for them. And so toxic parents are often narcissistic parents because they're more self-oriented of what's in it for me. Parenting is giving, and it's sacrifice. And so it's not about convenience. Preparing for emotional, relational, and spiritual maturity is what we do as parents in preparing our children for their future. We shape character, not just behavior. And you'll notice where there's just behavior being shaped, there's rigid rules, there's punishment, harsh punishment, there's whatever else, and there's an angry child, and there's a rebellious child as a result of it. And there's a child who's not going to fulfill their potential in life. There's 4 foundational reforms that we look at, and that's important to address as we briefly talk about it today. And reform number 1 is what we don't want to hear, because this is a hard one. Delay smartphones until high school. Now, that's the researchers and the studies, and I've quoted the studies in the past, and the book I'm writing on this subject has all the links, the references listed in there, but the researchers have all indicated pretty much the same thing. We need to delay the smartphones. If we don't delay, what's happening is mental illness is increasing, you name it. Depression, anxiety is skyrocketing. Suicides are going up among teenagers, and it's something that doesn't have to be if we make these adjustments. But if we don't make them early, it's much harder to make them later. If they've already had their smartphones when they're in elementary school or they're in junior high school, it's going to be hard to take it away from them, isn't it? So we need to start early with all that and make what adjustments we can. So delay smartphones until high school is reform number 1 that's recommended by the researchers. It's not just me saying that. This is what researchers are pretty much in agreement about. It protects from early digital dependence. It allows the brain to mature in such a way that it's not getting distracted. And I think in the future we may see a new diagnosis of digital ADHD, as a result of digital use, as a result of being on the phone for so long. It's created ADHD, attention deficit disorder. I think we're going to see that in the books in the future at some point if we don't set boundaries now. Supports face-to-face development if we do these reforms now. So By delaying smartphones, we're supporting the face-to-face development. We're supporting the eye contact, the looking, the conversing, the thinking through a discussion, the reasoning out of a discussion, instead of escaping constantly to what's on the phone or what's on the screen. Reform number 2 is postpone social media until age 16. Ouch. All right, it's a little too late now, isn't it? But maybe for the grandkids, it won't be. But that's what the researchers are recommending. Protect identity formation by postponing social media until age 16. Now, maybe you can't, maybe 14, all right, do it at 14. 12, okay, do it at 12. But as late as you can, it's going to help the child, the youth, to develop their own identity instead of the identity of the phone and what the phone is telling them their identity is, or what others are telling them their identity is through the phone. It's a form of abuse for most kids where they're getting abused that way. It's not at home, it's coming through the phone. That identity has to be fully developed. And if it's not fully, it's like having a neglectful parent. If you have a neglectful parent or an abusive parent, it's easy to develop personality disorders as a child. The formation begins to develop as a child. It's like borderline personalities or narcissistic personality or other kinds of personality disorders that are forming because they're not being nurtured. The nurture isn't there. The safety isn't there, and whatever else is needed. So they adjust in protecting themselves, and in protecting themselves, they develop these distorted ways of thinking and surviving, which develops into personality disorders in adult life. They don't develop their own identity, a healthy identity. So this safeguards from peer comparisons that they get from the phones and from social media. It delays that to where they've formed enough of an identity that they feel more confident about themselves, that when they are 16 and they get these nasty comments about them on the phone, through social media and whatever else, that it's not going to bother them that much, because now they're pretty well standing on their own 2 feet, and they know who they are, and they know that that person that's saying that about them, that's their problem, and they're projecting it onto them. They can reason that out at that point. That's what we want. We want to get them to mature enough to be able to handle those things when they're dealing with social media. And the sick kids that might be in school who are dishing that stuff out as bullies or as narcissists or as whatever else, because they're feeling so insecure about themselves, they have to tear you down. And we have adults that do that too, but they started early as well. But if your identity was well formed, doesn't bother. It goes in one ear and out the other, and you recognize, yeah, that person has a problem. Well, let me see if I can help them because of their problem. It reduces anxiety, loneliness, and cyberbullying by postponing media use. It supports healthier self-esteem. And we see the statistics of depression, anxiety going up, suicides going up. The studies have shown that have done controlled studies where they've taken the phones away, they've taken the social media away for a period of time. Depression decreases, they become brighter, happier. Anxiety decreases, they're more at peace, they're more settled, and thoughts of self-harm decreases. Thoughts of hostility decreases in those studies. It's not food doing that, although food may be contributing to it. It's the screen, and we got to manage it, because the future is the screen. It is digital, so they do need to learn it. It's important for them, But we need all these other things that they're not getting if they're dependent on the screen. And so we need to make them get out there and play, make them get out there and experience this adventure trip or this new experience together as a family and with friends as groups, Sunday school groups, church groups, youth groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. I mention that often. It doesn't have to be Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Many churches or denominations have their own versions of that. But anything that gets them out there away from the screen, that gives them a balance. And that's what we want for our kids. But it's not happening unless we as parents or grandparents or politicians or leaders begin encouraging that to happen. Let learning breathe. So reform number 3 is phone-free school environments. I live in a rather liberal community, county, and apparently they're not working very hard at it in the schools to keep the phones out of the classrooms. I hear from the teenagers, that kids aren't paying attention in the class. They're texting each other. They're making jokes about the teacher or about somebody else in the class. The bullies are saying nasty things, texting everybody else in the class, and they have everybody's address on their texts, and everybody's getting there, looking at the phones. They're not paying attention to the teachers. Now, some teachers may not like that. They say, put down the phone. But if the phone's in the classroom, those kids are going to find a way to pick it up and look at it. And the teacher can't be constantly looking for that when they're trying to teach, which means the phones need to be dropped off before going into the classrooms, or walking into the classrooms, they need to be turned in. I don't know how they do that, but something like that's going to have to happen. Or parents are going to need to keep those phones at home and not let them go to school with it. I think that's probably more ideal, if that's at all possible. I think that's more possible than expecting the school to monitor it. And then it's easy to see if someone has a phone that they're not supposed to have one. Yet, again, the studies are showing activity in the classroom increases without phones. When they take the phones away over a period of months, they see that activity increases, grades increase, participation, discussions, and so on. And I think some of the longer term studies that I haven't read about yet are going to show that there's at least 1 point grade level increase in schools where they limit that phone use. Think about it at home. If you limit that phone use, do you participate more? Is there more discussions? Is there more activities together going on? Yeah, of course there is. If that's what you want, if you just want to be convenient for yourself, you're not going to do that, then it's not going to happen. But without that, there is more participation because kids get bored. And what do they do when they get bored? Mom, Dad, what can we do? What do can we do this? And you participate more. But with the phones or the internet and all that, they don't need mom and dad anymore. And they don't need this extra activities. They've got their attention focused on something that's not teaching them all these other things that they need to learn. Reform number 4 is revive unsupervised play. Freedom that builds strength. And that's what it does when they're outside playing, having a good time together as a group, or some activity together. They're building their strength. They're building their character. They're learning how to get along with others. When I was young, it'd get dark. Okay, we knew to go home when it got dark, but until then we were out playing football or baseball or tag or hide and seek, and sometimes we wouldn't get along and we'd yell at each other and we'd get angry, but then we would be friends 5 minutes later and we'd be playing again and having a good time. We were learning how to deal with conflicts. We were becoming better at communicating. We were improving our relational skills that way. Are they doing that now on the screen, sitting in their bedroom in the dark, or under the sheets till 3 or 4 a.m., which I hope that's not happening at your house. Well, promotes creativity and resilience. When we revive unsupervised play, it builds independence and problem solving, reduces anxiety and depression, as I've said. And in the Bible, when a lion or a bear came, David said, when a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, he said. Basically what he's saying is he protected his flock. Now, as parents, aren't we supposed to protect our children? If we're not setting boundaries, healthy boundaries for the digital media, are we protecting our children or not? Are we letting the wolves get at them, or are we protecting them? That's part of our job as parents. Psychological backing also supports all of this. Developmental stages matter, and we've talked about Erickson earlier, his developmental stage of industry versus inferiority and the importance of that. Industry versus inferiority occurs during elementary school ages, somewhere around between age 6 to 12. And so that's, a good number of years there. And the brain is forming new pathways where by the age of 9, 10, they're grasping abstract thinking well. And so now they can put 2 and 2 together, understand why it's 4, not just memorize that it's 4. So this stage is characterized by children's growing focus on developing skills, competence in various areas, leading to a sense of industry or competence. I feel good about myself. I feel I can do this. I feel adequate. I'm competent. And if I'm not feeling competent, my esteem is going to go down. Therefore, I'm going to feel inferior. Industry versus inferiority. If that doesn't develop properly, inferiority is going to be stronger than the industry part, the competence part. The engineer part, as the joke said earlier, if that's occurring, what's going to happen in adult life? Do you want that for your kids? No, I don't. I think we want balance, and balance is going to be helpful if we set those healthy boundaries in love. We have to do it in love, and certainly that means you have to be flexible about it. Some kids can handle boundaries better than others. Some kids can handle more boundaries. Other kids, you have to stretch the boundaries somewhat, adjust those boundaries because they're different. Their temperaments are different. You have the melancholy temperament that's a loner, serious, private, detailed. They can handle those kinds of boundaries that are fairly rigid, fairly firm. That they like that. They prefer boundaries. But then you got the extroverts, the sanguine temperaments, that they don't like boundaries at all. They're more excitable. They're more people-oriented. They're more social. They want to play. They want activity. They have trouble with being in the boundaries. And so sometimes if you have a child that's extroverted, a sanguine temperament, you have to flex the boundary a little bit for that one in such a way that with the other one seeing that, they go, well, why is that? Well, it's because, and so you discuss it together in helping one another to understand their differences and how it's okay to be flexible because of differences. And then you got the other temperaments, like phlegmatic is more middle of the road, democratic temperament, and they're more realistic and diplomatic in things, and so they're more the peacemaker, and okay, yeah, that makes sense, and that's the way it should be, and because it's right, then that's what we should do. It's logical. And then you got the supine temperament, which I'm supine. I can be either melancholy or sanguine. I can go back and forth in that regard, but I'm more laid back. I'd rather be an observer, so I don't like to lead. I make leaders look good, so I support the leader, but I'm teaching, I'm encouraging, I'm exhorting. As a counselor, I exhort. Those are gifts of the supine temperament. And so I will understand more of these changes in the boundaries that if I was a child and the parent says it, however, I will hold it in, and I might get angry about it if it's not explained to me why. But when it's explained to me why and it makes sense, oh, okay, I can do that. So our temperaments are different, and our children's temperaments are different. In other words, one size doesn't fit all when you're dealing with social media, setting boundaries for your family if you have more than one child. Be reasonable about it, be flexible about it, but discuss it. And when there's a problem, take the time to have conversations regarding it. Real world interaction versus screen interaction. We need that developmental stage of the real world interaction to be involved. So balance is going to be important, as we keep saying that. Structured guidance equals developmental strength. If you have the boundaries, if you have structure and guidance in the structure, that is, at times you may have to lead the way, you may have to set examples, or you may have to flex it a little bit, adjust the structure. But when you do that, you're developing strength in the child for the future. As we said earlier, collective action in parenting. We've got to get together, support one another, encourage one another. If we don't do that, well, so-and-so's parents let them watch TV or let them watch the screen or let them play games till 10 o'clock. But you won't let us do that. You want us to go to bed at 9 o'clock. That's not fair. Well, we hear all those comparisons all the time as parents. With digital media, it gets more intense. And so it's important, work together as parents. If your kids have friends, talk with their parents, become friends with their parents. Discuss these things together. Try to find a middle ground together of what you all might agree on for what would be right in the boundaries that we set for our children at home. So if they're setting similar boundaries and you're setting similar boundaries, everyone's in agreement, makes it easier to have the kids stay within those boundaries. You're working together. The same goes for the school or the community if we can get together on all of this. Shared boundaries change norms. Schools, churches, that's going to be reinforcement if they're working together and talking about these shared boundaries. That's mutual accountability, and that strengthens families. The Bible says iron sharpens iron. We often say that, but it's true. If I'm strong and I work with another strong person, we're helping each other to remain strong. If I'm weak and I'm working with a stronger person, am I going to make them weaker, or are they going to make me stronger? But if we're working together in an agreement, likely is they're going to make me stronger. When I used to play tennis when I was younger, I didn't like playing with someone who wasn't as good a player as I was. I wanted to play with someone who was not equal but better than me. because that would make me improve my game. And golf was the same way when I played golf. I wanted to play with someone better so I could learn from them so I can get better. We help each other and we build each other up. We want to help our kids to do the same. And if we're working towards that with screen media and all these things, that'll happen. Shifting the school culture is another story, because that's going to be more difficult. That's outside the home, outside of much of your control, which is why it's important to talk about these things with one another, talk about it with the teachers, talk about it with the leaders, the politicians. Consistent boundaries it brings about a new culture, a culture of growth when things are consistent. Delayed access equals long-term benefits. High schools reap the fruit of early reforms, so actually it benefits the high school. I was talking with a high school teacher the other day from another state who was on vacation, and in their particular state, they're cutting the funding in their county for the schools, and it was a 15% cut, he said. I said, what in the world are they doing? They should be increasing the funding for the schools, not decreasing the funding. And this is one of those states that, well, let's just say they're not doing it the right way. What's happening there? Well, they want that money to go somewhere else, not to the schools. Basically, the bottom line of those things, which is why the education system is such a mess right now in our country, and we're number 40 in the list of top 40s around the world. Going back to the states as they're planning on doing and all that, I'm sure that's going to benefit, and I'm not into all that politics and everything, so I don't know. But what I do know is we don't have that complete control of what's going on there, but we do have influence. Influence your friends, your teachers, and whoever else, the leaders, the politicians, to help setting these boundaries for screen media with our kids. Biblical wisdom helps with our independence, and it helps our kids with their independence. So train them up for responsibility. Independence is a training ground. Overprotection hinders growth. Trust God in that training, and you'll have more balance in that protecting of your children. In certain areas, you have to protect more because they may be more dangerous areas, more things can go on in those areas. Sure, you got to protect more. But if you're not in those areas, well, be a little more flexible and be more observant if you need to be, but handle it in such a way that you're teaching your child to be responsible, to not stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning under the sheets playing a game and not be able to get up in the morning to go to school as a result. Train up a child in the way he should go, the Bible says, and that's a scripture we love to talk about. Practical results of the reforms, well, the outcomes, they matter. Confidence, focus, faith, resilience, reduced anxiety and depression, that's a result of setting those boundaries according to the studies. Again, it's not me saying this is what the results are. Better attention and focus, healthier peer bonds, healthier relationships with one another, in other words, increased confidence and resilience. All of those things are benefits. If that's occurring, then why not set those boundaries? Why not limit screen use to what's reasonable for their age? A call for courageous parenting, and that's what it takes. It takes courageous parenting. And we do have to choose that harder path when we set boundaries. It is a more difficult path. Don't parent for convenience, as we said. And next time we're going to talk about parenting for eternity as a closure in our parenting series. So I hope you'll stay tuned for that, because parenting for eternity is taking it to the next step It's not merely about raising well-mannered children or parenting them for college or a career. It's going beyond that. Those goals, while important, they're just temporary. And when we speak of parenting for eternity, we're referring to a higher calling, a sacred calling, you might say. There are those of you who have no faith, that you don't believe in eternity. Well, you believe when you die, and that's it. Well, that's fine. But parenting for eternity is parenting through that, into that time, but beyond it, if you do have faith that there could be something more beyond all that. And if that's the goal, then we're building their character now in a better way, in a more well-rounded way, not just the soul and the body, but the spirit also, so which makes a more well-rounded child and adult in the future. So we'll be discussing that as closure in our parenting series next time. Raise image bearers and not digital addicts. The Bible tells us these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. And the heart in the Bible refers to the heart and the mind. So it's in both places. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. In other words, that's parenting for eternity. It's not just for the moment. A final encouragement for today: rise up, answer that call as a parent, shape the minds of your kids with wisdom, guard their hearts with vigilance, inspire with prayer and purpose. I love having purpose. It helps me get up in the morning when I have purpose for the day. And can you imagine a child who doesn't have purpose? What am I going to do today? I might as well just stay in bed. It's awful for kids. I hear from them. They tell me it's awful for them if they don't have purpose in the day. Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed, the Bible tells us. Transform your kids. Give them that purpose. With the healthy boundaries, they'll have that purpose. So next time, as I said, fulfilling parenting responsibility by parenting for eternity as a closure in our parenting series. I hope you've enjoyed that. Give us a like, subscribe. May your troubles be minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. See you next time. God bless.